Yeah, so finding the right people is one of the hardest skills, and also especially for your market where it's heavily skill dependent. You can't bring just anyone in and pretty much train them up overnight. How do you go about obviously making sure that you find the right people?
Oh, this is one of those questions, and this is one of those things in business that there is no answer. There is no silver bullet. You literally have to live by trial and error because, and I've experienced most ends of the scale as far as recruitment goes. There are times where you get it right, and when it's right, and it works brilliantly. And there are times when it's a huge failure, and it's a time and resource vampire on the business. So we go through the usual. I have gone through the usual recruitment scenario. We put adverts out on job boards. We headhunt on LinkedIn, and then we go through the interview process, which we've changed a lot over the years. We make it a lot tougher now. Now, there's definitely an argument going on LinkedIn and other various forums as to how many interviews should a candidate go through. And obviously, the candidates are going to say one or two interviews. Of course, they are. But I believe in more. We put people through a 4 or 5 phase process on recruitment, and some might think that's a bit harsh. But try running a business where you're relying on finding the right people for that business, and then run a business where that person that you hire is not the right person and is doing nothing but creating you headache. Is pushing back against everything that you want to achieve as a business, even though you're fair and you're trying to do everything that you're supposed to do and then some, and then to put them through a slightly tougher interview process. And it's not tough. It's not a tough process. It's just it's a more elongated process, and I'll tell you why. So what we found is when we were doing one or two interviews, the candidates were flying through that process and interview, and we were getting a little bit carried away and a bit excited. Oh, they're amazing. They're going to fit perfectly. And we're hiring just the wrong kind of characters. When you start adding additional processes to it, what you find is most people drop off by the third round. The people that are there and just doing interviews by numbers, it's like, I'm desperate for a job. I don't care. I don't care where I'm applying. I just need a job. And they get filtered out pretty quick. The minute you get onto round three, which is now we want you to do a presentation, we want you to work on a task. Now you start to realize who the serious candidates are versus the non. Now, I'm not oblivious or naive enough to think that everybody wants to work for my business. I know that there's going to be a volume of traffic in those first and second interviews. But what I hope, and is if we've done our jobs properly as interviewers, that by the second and third interview, that candidate who might have been just chancing their look at everything start to look at us as a business and think, do you know what? Actually, I really do want to work for these guys. I quite like what they're saying, what they're about. So if you get a candidate that makes it to round 3 and 4, then that that they're baked in now, that they really want this job, and that they're not doing it as a volume thing. And then by interview 5, which is generally usually an interview with myself or Ben, who's our MD here, and that's very informal. It's literally just ticking a few boxes to make sure that we're absolutely on the same page. And then we, hire the right kind of candidate. And when we've done that and followed that process, 9 times out of 10, we find the right candidate in the long run for the business. So, yeah, as I've said, and even there are times when we've not had the right people in the business, and there's the other side of the coin. Is moving faster. There's a saying: hire slow, fire fast,
Mm.
and it's true. And I think people need to live by that in business. If you've got a cancer developing in the business, and we all have it, none of us. Even though on LinkedIn you see a lot of companies and agencies specifically talking about how amazing their teams are, and there's always pictures of people having birthday cake and bringing their dogs to work, and everything's hunky dory. And we all know that that's not true. That's just absolutely not true. The reality is, you're always going to have struggles with people in a business when you get to a certain size, especially when you start getting politics in office politics and little cliques developing, and it just becomes a massive headache. So going back to recruitment, going through a process And I think there's nothing wrong with having a slightly stricter policy in place to protect not only you, but the candidates as well. Because there's nothing worse for the candidate than taking on a job that isn't actually for them either. So it's always a two-way conversation. It's always two-way traffic. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that, and I get frustrated when I see people arguing against it, saying, "But why would you put them through more than 2 interviews? Why would you not?"
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive investment, isn't it? It's investment in time, it's investment in money, and it's obviously the future of the business as well. Because, like you said, if you have the wrong person that comes into the business, it can make a huge impact on what you do day to day.